Okay, so what if the secret to beating a really crippling emotion wasn't some huge mental battle, but just a single, simple, physical action? Today, we're going to dig into this powerful idea that sometimes the smallest possible movement can actually conquer the greatest darkness. So, let's start with a writer. This guy is totally trapped in a cycle of despair. And for him, every single morning started with this heavy, paralyzing dread. The thought of that blank page, it wasn't just intimidating, it was like this impossible mountain he could never climb. He was just frozen. And this wasn't just, feeling sad. This was a paralyzing dread, a fog of self-criticism that felt like a wolf was always at his door. Let's call it the wolf of despair. And it was stopping him cold from doing the one thing he loved most, writing. So he finally goes to his therapist, right? And he's probably expecting some deep psychological exercise. But instead, she hits him with this completely wild advice. I don't want you to write your book. Can you imagine hearing that? It was a total pattern interrupt designed to stop him from fighting this huge problem head-on. And then she gives him his actual mission. Your only job is to clean your desk. That's it. The goal had nothing to do with conquering the massive mountain of writing a book. It was just take one small, single, purposeful action. Now, to really get why this bizarre advice is so brilliant, we have to look at an old Cherokee parable. It's a story about a battle that's happening inside every single one of us, a battle between two wolves. This story, it perfectly illustrates something called the Emotional Displacement Model. And the idea is actually super simple. Your mind just can't hold two powerful opposing emotions at the exact same time. So purposeful action literally crowds out passive despair. Think about it. You can't be actively building something up while also being totally consumed by the feeling of being torn down. It just doesn't work. So check this out. On one side, you've got the wolf of despair. What does it feed on? Inaction, worry, just sitting there. And on the other side, you've got the wolf of purpose, and it feeds on deliberate, planned work. So one gets stronger when you do nothing. The other gets stronger when you do anything. The author Napoleon Hill actually discovered what he called an unbeatable rule for mastering these exact kinds of internal battles. Hill wrote about the transmutation of those emotional frustrations through definitely planned work. Now that word, transmutation, that's the whole key. Work isn't just a way to distract yourself from pain, it's a way to actually transform that negative energy into something real and productive. And this insight, it just completely flips the script on how we all think about motivation. We're always told to wait until we feel good or inspired before we get started. But this says the exact opposite. You don't wait to feel good to get started. You get started in order to feel good. Action isn't the result of motivation. It's the cause of it. So let's jump back to our writer. How did this whole thing actually play out for him? Starting with that strange advice from his therapist. So the task was simple. Just clean the desk. It probably felt absurd, totally pointless. But, with nothing left to lose, he just forced his hands to move, shuffling a few papers, wiping away some dust. And as he did it, as he created this one tiny pocket of physical order in his chaotic world, the fog in his mind actually lifted, just a little bit. That small physical action created a subtle but an immediate and totally noticeable shift inside his head. And that right there, that's the principle in action. In that moment, he fed the wolf of purpose. That one small, deliberate act was a meal for the positive wolf, and it made it just a tiny bit stronger. So building on that little bit of momentum, the task from his therapist the next day was still incredibly small. But now, it was pointed directly at his bigger goal. The new mission was just to write one single sentence. All right, so how do we actually use this? Here's the playbook. 1, pick your action ahead of time. Know what that small task is going to be. 2, shrink the goal. Make it almost laughably small. 3, and this is the big one, act before you think. Don't let that wolf of despair start a debate with you. Just start moving. 4, as you're doing it, just focus on the task itself. And 5, when you're done, take 1 second and just notice the shift. That little feeling of victory, that's you feeding the wolf of purpose. Let's see how these tiny, consistent actions ended up leading to a huge transformation for our writer, literally crowding out all that darkness. This really shows the whole journey. It wasn't some sudden miracle, right? It was a slow, steady build. Day 1 was just cleaning a desk. A week later, he wrote a single sentence.
2 months in, he had a paragraph. And after 7 months of just feeding the right wolf, one small action at a time, he had finished his book.
The biggest takeaway here is this. He won the battle, not by fighting the negative, not by wrestling with his depression head-on. No, he won by actively, consistently, and deliberately feeding the positive. He simply displaced all that despair by building a new habit of purposeful action. So in the end, that battle inside, it's always won by the wolf you feed. And the only question that really matters is the one you have to answer for yourself right now. Which wolf will you feed today?